Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. This is Shauna Griffiths. I'm host of Real Talk, powered by CMD. And today I am so glad to have with us Tatiana Oliveira Simonian. And I have to say, she was introduced by someone we've had on here, Javid Lewis, who is an absolute superstar, who's working in brand strategy at Twitter Next. So shout out, thank you so much, Javid. But thank you so much for coming. It's great to be getting to know you, and I appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been really fun getting to know you as well.
Yeah, it's so funny when Javid sent me your website, I think I told you this, I was reading it and I was like, oh my God, who is this woman? I was like, holy shit, she's amazing. I mean, like, what an incredible career, and like in the nexus of where everybody is paying so much attention, and whether it's consumers or marketers, and so in that the top tech, culture, and entertainment brands in the world you've had your hands on. So I'll probably miss some, but like Twitter, Tumblr, which is Verizon and Yahoo, Disney, and Amazon. I mean, that is so incredible. And I also love the part of where you created your own reality to what you're doing today, being speaker, writer, consultant, coach, and a huge advocate in the DEI space, which I think is awesome and so incredibly needed. So I would love for you to share with us your evolution and how you have created this reality for yourself.
Oh yeah, thank you. Gosh, well, it certainly wasn't linear. I mean, no. I think that, I think that one of the interesting things about tech is so many of the jobs you end up with are jobs that didn't exist before.
Oh, so true.
And you know what I mean? And that's just been my career history has not been, something that I plotted out with a 10-year plan. It was really just, I kept following my curiosity. I started out as like kind of like a MySpace hacker, like every Gen Xer,
Yeah.
And then I wound up with a social media consultancy on the side. Around 17 years ago, I was working in-house at Hot Topic Corporate, creating their social, doing copywriting. I was also a music journalist. And then I interviewed Smashing Pumpkins, and Billy Corgan was like, wait, why is your MySpace page better than ours? and that curiosity from him led to me kind of starting my own social media consultancy. Then I went to Disney, where I did social media strategy for the pop stars and our film soundtracks. Then Nielsen, I wanted to learn. That was a VP of sales role, but it was how you measure sponsored entertainment, because to this day, not a lot of people even know what their ROI is on their sponsorships. Right. And it helps artists to know what they're worth. It helps brands to know ROI. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. Then I went to Tumblr for 4 years, where I was global head of entertainment. My specialty has been this weird triangle of entertainment, consumer, social, brand marketing. Mm-hmm. And then most recently I was at Amazon Music. And, I think what happens for people that are in big tech companies is you just keep going from one big tech company to the other. You're in the recruiting pipeline for all the same places. You see all the same people. And I just got to a point where I was like, I need a break. I want to do something different. I don't know what it is. Yeah. And I can certainly do all this stuff on my own. And so I just thought I would go freelance, and I could do marketing consulting on the creative strategy side, which I love. Like I call it the big Don Draper stuff. And then I could also do speech coaching and media training, because I have a background in that and I love it. I can also do executive coaching. I also have a background in that, training under Marshall Goldsmith, who's one of the top coaches in the world. And I just thought I would do that for a while before I decide if going back in-house somewhere is something I want to do. And I do want to say, I think a lot of people don't normalize this. I think there's something like a shame associated if your worth isn't tied to a big company anymore. And I think right now, post-COVID, so many people are making changes. Yeah. And I want to encourage people to lean into that intuition, because I have never been happier than I am right now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I love it as you talk about it. It's like the bravery and courage I think it takes to make your entire evolution as you talked about it. Because you're right. Like we came up in this time where we were launching social media. We were discovering what it is, and it's grown so much since then. You know, and you were doing it for the top brands in the world, which is, I mean, just like I said, I was like, who is this lady? You know? And so I think, but then it's also like, then it takes so much courage then to also make the step where you do what you need to do for you and you try something on your own. And to your point, it doesn't happen overnight. And so I just want to acknowledge that. And also, as you're saying to people, like, lean into it, know that it takes bravery and courage.
And fear. I mean, I think I was saying to someone yesterday, I felt more fear before I was out on my own than being on my own. Like once I was on my own, I was like, oh, this is not that bad.
It is. It's really true. And I can identify with that one. So that's a good one. But as you talk about it, and as I had read your website, you have something in there just really captivated me. And it's the philosophies you have about your motto of creativity over competition. And then your philosophy of marketing, which I think is such a great soundbite, which is that you can't outsource culture. And so I would love for you to talk about those things and share your perspective.
Yeah. So creativity over competition came about because I would get really challenged being, well, if we go back to the early days of when consumer social is in this zenith, you know, period 2007 to 2011, I would say, you know, all of these social platforms looked at each other as enemies. You know, when I worked at Twitter, you would not talk about Facebook, right? That was like, if you went to work for them, it was almost like persona non grata. Yeah. And I think Twitter did a really great job of always focusing on the future and being innovative. And what I see in so many small businesses and even really big businesses that I've worked at today as well, is that so many folks get caught up with looking sideways or behind themselves at their competition. Yeah. And they end up not spending enough time looking forward and innovating. And so if you're spending so much of your time on your competition and you're just trying to rush out feature sets or products that match them, you're not innovating. You're not doing anything interesting. And, you know, from a SWOT analysis perspective, yes, of course, we all need to have competitive analysis under our belts and be aware of what our competition is doing, but you shouldn't be living there. Right. You should always be focused on doing something the competition is not doing. Otherwise, you're not an innovator. And so part of that is also a mental thing too. I would see people get so obsessed and so angry toward competitors, even in our everyday lives. You know, we have that nemesis in our career who has what we wish we had. And usually that person doesn't even want the same things as you. Right. So it's just, you know, focus on creating your own reality versus being obsessed with other people. And then you can't outsource culture is my response to the shift we saw in marketing over the last decade, where you know, marketing was originally viewed as always this big creative storytelling and big picture creativity and capturing hearts and minds. And then over the last 10 years, it's become a complete pendulum switch to this argument of only being about growth and data and numbers and performance. And, you know, examples are Growth Hacker by Ryan Holiday, or the Quantum Marketing book that just came out by Raja. And you know, these are great books. I've read them. I recommend them to people. But one of the things that's interesting is that, you know, I worked at Nielsen. I know data when it comes to marketing very well. But if all you're doing is relying on data, you are missing out on intuitive opportunity. And you can outsource data. You can outsource your performance marketing just about anywhere in the world, right? You can't outsource IP. You can't outsource culture. And so many of the movements and the culture defining things that happen in marketing, I'll give you an example. They have nothing to do with data. So I'll give you an example. I've been obsessed, and partly it's because I'm part Brazilian, but like with Raíssa Leal, the 13-year-old little gal from Brazil who won the skateboarding silver medal. And in Brazil, she's known as Fadinha, which means the little fairy, because she became famous because Tony Hawk shared a video of her in a fairy outfit doing skateboarding tricks. And she was 7 years old. Right. And what's interesting is now this story has captivated the world of this little girl who would skate in fairy costumes and do these insanely challenging tricks.
Right.
And she's
high tops,
pushing, yeah, and high tops. Just what a style icon. But what I love about that from a cultural perspective is this little girl is changing the face of skateboarding globally. Yeah. She is one of the best marketing campaigns and cultural ambassadors that you could imagine for the sport of skateboarding in the world right now. And that is not something that could have been predicted by data.
Right.
That is not, that is not something that you could have been like, oh, well, whatever our competitor's doing and we need to spend more money in this thing. Like, you can't do that. It's cultural. Yeah. Right. And those, to me, for brands that care about, and my specialty are brands that focus on the youth market. So I guess if your target market is 55 and over, I don't know if it's as relevant, but if capturing the hearts and minds of 18 to 34 matters, then lean into culture. On my teams, I lean into the youngest people on my team, right, and the least experienced people in my team, because oftentimes they are closer to culture than I am. Right. And I can learn from them. So gosh, that was a lot more long-winded than I wanted it to be, but I get so passionate about that subject, Shauna.
No, it's so great. Because again, I think like people talk really surface about things sometimes. And, you know, I said it was a soundbite, but it's not. It really is deep rooted. And I really appreciate you talking about it like that, so we really understand what it means. You know, it's great. And it's probably part of what makes you such a great leader is the way that you explain things to people. You give them the whys of things, you know, so, which actually leads me to my next point, was that you really do see yourself as a people leader, which I just deeply appreciate, especially with all of the work that you've been doing in coaching and mentoring, including with BIPOC. And, you know, so I would just love for you to share with people the things that you're doing in that space and the impact that you're looking to make.
Yeah. So, you know, as mentioned earlier, I'm part Brazilian, so I'm Latina. My mother was a Brazilian undocumented immigrant. My dad was an Armenian refugee, actually born in Brazil and raised in East LA. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I'm a non-traditional tech executive. Yeah. You know, didn't go to Stanford or didn't work at Google. Don't come from parents who went to college. And to me, it's been really important because mentorship changed my career to get forward. And I've had a blog on Medium for years called Mentorship, and the idea behind it is just providing mentorship advice that's scalable and sharing that. Most recently, I just provided, I opened up my DMs and said, book time if you're a person of color. And I've done over 32 sessions in the last 3 weeks with people of color, ranging from a Bangladeshi luxury florist in Brooklyn to a Latino PhD from Berkeley to a Black Reiki healer, to a Puerto Rican student, and then a Chinese gal that works at Dropbox who got inspired to work in data because I worked at Nielsen, which was very inspiring because I was like, I'm not even that good at, like, I wasn't a data scientist. And it's something I feel really, really passionately about. I really judge a large part of my career by how I grow the people under me. I think there's this misconception that leading teams and leading people is just delegating. And I take it really seriously. And anyone who's reported to me will tell you I am not an easy manager. I'm not. I'm empathetic and I have high standards, and I will tell you the truth. And sometimes you won't like it. Yep. But the people who truly want to grow will get multiple promotions under me and multiple raises under me if they're down to do the work. Yep. And people who are not very hardworking or like resting on their laurels, they may not have as high of an opinion of me. And that's part of the rub also of, like, as a manager, you need to be fair, but be willing to not be liked sometimes in order to do what's right. And I always let my results speak for themselves. My results are that I deliver numbers, I hit my KPIs, and I get people raises and promotions if they do their job. And many of my direct reports are my references for jobs because they're willing to attest to what I've done. And then I also have like a crew of people I just mentor and stay in touch with just because I'm invested in their careers.
That's incredible. It's incredible. And again, like I can absolutely, identify with stuff you're saying, because I too really believe, and someone actually said about me, like, I'm tough, but I'm fair. And, I think that is, I think and part of that though is as you describe your journey and the way that you operate, you're leading by example. And I think that can be so powerful as well in that. And that's part of why those people are loyal to you and want to grow, with and around you. So that's awesome. And you've talked so much about, and this is great, about the impact you have on others and how you operate that. And I think there's a part that people forget or overlook that leaders need inspiration too. We have to fill up our cups. And so I'm curious, who are the people? Are there some people that you look to for inspiration, or you look to as, really great leaders around you?
Yeah, totally. I think that I'm inspired by people who operate outside of the norm. I'm excited by people who don't go traditional routes. So much of the world I'm around is like VC funded startup, blah, blah, blah. And I'm interested in people who think outside that box. There's some founders and that I think are really amazing are, for example, Unique Jones. She has so many amazing, massive Instagrams, such as Because of Them, We Can, which is a Black excellence Instagram. She's also the creator of Culture Tags, which is a board game geared toward the Black American market and is carried in Target and just around anywhere. She is a branding mastermind. She also has one of the most amazingly photogenic families I've ever seen in my life. But I am just so amazed by Unique. And also because like she has encountered people trying to copy her IP, rip off her brand, and she will go straight to Instagram and talk about it and break it down and educate those people on how business works, which I have found to be an amazing masterclass. She's phenomenal. And for those listening, her name is spelled Eunique. So you can find her on Instagram and also follow Because of Them We Can. I'd love following that account. My friend Patty Rodriguez. Patty was known as an on-air host with Ryan Seacrest in Los Angeles and became a co-creator and co-founder of Little Libros, which are children's books geared to the Latino market. There's like Little Selena, Little Frida Kahlo. I got my niece some of these books, and her business partner did something that is pretty non-traditional when they wanted to expand their business. Rather than open it up to venture funding, they decided to give the Latino community and any of their fans the opportunity to invest. And they did it through a platform that allows you to basically raise your own seed funding. And she raised $2.5 million.
Incredible.
And to me, that was amazing because that's really the future of what we can do in this space and how we can disrupt the general norms of how we create. I just think it's people like that to me are so inspiring. There are two Latina founders that I'm friends with, Alessandra Angelini, who has an influencer marketplace that's launching soon. So there's no place where you can go book an influencer. Everyone does these things through DMs. She's going to be launching that soon. And Sofia Vergara is one of her investors, along with amazing folks. My friend Pierina Merino has an AI app called Flick Play, which I think she's just one of the most visionary thinkers I've ever met. She used to be an architect for Frank Gehry, and now she has this incredible AI social app that she's created. So these are all women that to me are so inspiring because they're doing things that aren't in the market, and they had to be the first, and they believed in themselves, and they're all women of color as well. And it's just exciting to see what's out there, because to me, it's so much more interesting than the usual guess who raised money from blah, blah, blah kind of argument we have every time.
Yeah, it's great. And thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for putting these people out and, at the forefront. And I'll make sure that we tag them when we post this. So thank you.
Hey.
So when we were talking about leadership and, that the way you operate the other day, you were sharing with me about how, and we were talking about how we both feel that feedback is so important. And you shared with me, I believe it's the SBI feedback technique. And it's funny because since then it has actually come up throughout since our last conversation has actually come up, not exactly the name SBI feedback, but little bits of it that you talked about. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait for this. So I would love for you said you'd walk us through an example of that. So I'm going to turn it back to you and would love for you to do that.
Yeah, so feedback is an area that I think is one of the most critical areas for growing yourself as any stage of leadership, whether you're a senior executive or a junior executive. I think when you're junior, you're afraid of it. You just all automatically assume it's bad. And then when you're senior, it comes to a point where you need to maybe give it to leadership above you. And you need the framework for doing that effectively, or you need to do it with people on your team and find a way. Sometimes you're really angry, someone made a mistake, and you want to find a way to just like parse it and get to the right space. And so a big thing to me, and I'm sure you've experienced this, is as you grow as a senior leader, emotional regulation in business is huge. EQ is something we all talk about, right? So the situation, behavior, intent model allows us to get out of saying you did this and blame people, which is always coming from a place of I'm right. And the truth generally in business and in conflict in general, the truth is generally more it's not binary, it's generally in the gray, right? It allows you to probe intent. And so the first two parts of it are basically assuming competency and assuming positive intent. And so the example for this might be, let's say someone on my team was supposed to present a 20-slide deck to senior leadership. And I find out 30 minutes before the presentation that they're not done. And they've only done 10 slides. So now I have to come in and get all this stuff done. They didn't communicate any of this. I'm really upset. But I don't know what's going on in their life either. Who knows? So I wound up wrapping it up. I tell them we're going to tag team the presentation. We go do the presentation afterwards. I'm going to take them aside and do a one-on-one. The first thing I want to do to set the stage is, and sometimes we call this like Oreoing, when you do good, bad, good. I just think it's better to do it this way. But I would say you want to assume competency and positive intent. Hey, let's call it Mike. Hey, Mike, I know you're really great at what you do. And I know that you want to do a good job. Yeah. And I'm assuming you meant the best. And then you describe the situation. We were supposed to have a 20-slide deck done and sent to leadership an hour before, and behavior. That didn't happen. It was only 10 slides, and you didn't communicate to me in advance. And then you get to intent. Instead of saying, I feel you go, I just like to better understand, what was your intent for not finishing that and not communicating to me in advance that you need help? Is there something going on in your life I'm not aware of? Because I'd really like to understand. And let's say they're like, no, I just didn't have time. And then you can just continue. So your intent was to just partially finish it because you didn't have time. And you continue to kind of rabbit hole down until you get somewhere, and maybe you find out they're having trouble in their family life, or maybe you find out that they're just disengaged with work right now, and you might need to get into a more structured performance coaching conversation with them later. But it's a much better way to frame feedback, either up, across, or down, versus how could you do that? Do you know how important this was? I expect the best for my teams, and which then turns into this cult of personality of me versus you, instead of I'm going to hold you accountable by asking you what your intent was and not doing this as requested. And it's tremendously disarming, and it's better to do it after you've had time to cool down, which I think is something most of us need. Because I think for all of us, when a ball is dropped, like being a chill arbiter of feedback is not the first thing on our mind.
No, it's so true. I love this. And thank you so much again for like explaining that the way you did, for going through the example. Everyone listen to that. Rewind, re-listen. It is so good, so good. And even the way you describe it and you give the different personalities, you can just tell bit different. Think about the impact of the two different styles of feedback that you spoke to. So amazing, amazing. Before I let you go, I have a couple other things that I would love to get from you, because you have been in this nexus of culture, entertainment, tech. I think you really have an idea of, and you're so visionary, right? You're about innovation and what's going on. So are there some trends that you can share with us that you're seeing? Maybe anything that you think that brands or people should do more or less of?
Well, okay, there's two different kinds of trends, right? There's like, I would say product market trends, and then I would say marketing trends. On the product market side, I'm super excited by everything happening in future tech. So VR, as we see more headsets evolve and then get less clunky. One of my mentors is the creator of a psychedelic meditation app called Trip on Oculus. That's amazing. That like psychedelia is now mainstream, and we're seeing more of that in, with the way different modalities, or the whether it's four sigmatic mushrooms, which are not psychedelic but still like mushrooms went mainstream, to psychedelic meditation. Like, to me, that's so fascinating. I think what we're going to see with AI over the next couple of years is going to be so exciting. I'm really fascinated with what's going to happen there, and I really do love my Oculus. From a marketing perspective, I think, we as marketers, we always talk about authenticity, but I think it's becoming so much more critical to brand success now. I think whether it's, Target showing models that have stretch marks, or companies being able to say when they've made a misstep and being really honest about that. I think telling the truth is extremely important. I also think, and I'm loath to call this a trend, but seeing increased numbers of diversity. You watch commercials now and diversity has increased hugely. The amount of shows getting greenlit, the amount of senior executives getting hired. My hope is that this is not performative. I think some of it probably is, but my hope is that we will also change some of these systems and change some of the infrastructures for these large organizations, whether it's a film studio or a tech company, to become more diverse. And I mean across the board. Like, let's increase levels of women at the leadership table. Let's increase people over 40. Let's talk about ableism. Like, let's change the narrative so it's more reflective of the consumer base, right? Absolutely. And so that to me is super exciting. I think social media has allowed so many people to become their own brands as well. And then the power they wield changes conversations. So those are the things that I think about a lot, that I'm excited about. And there's also just so many cool tools in marketing now. Like, I remember back in the day when I was like first starting out in social, it was just like you had you and your MySpace dashboard, and now you got later Canva, you can do your thing on Figma, and you can do Hootsuite or whatever. There's still no fantastic social marketing dashboard. And I generally don't do that too much. It's more my teams that do it. So I think there's still room for something to quantify that space a lot better. But it's just it's an exciting time in tech, man. There's just so many cool tools to automate things and help you. I'm a data-driven intuitive marketer. Like, I'm a creative through and through. I use data to influence my decisions, but not to tell me 100% what to do.
Right. I love the way you weave you said, you're creative through and through. And I love that, so I think that's so much of paying attention to where people are, where they're going, meeting people where they are, where they're going. So that's awesome. And thank you for sharing that. And you spent so much time in the music space. I have to know, who are the top people in your playlist?
Oh, you know what? Let me share some bands there's a band, I'll share some bands people may not know. There's a band out of the UK called Bedroom that I like right now. I found them during the pandemic. I've just been listening to another band. I think they're also UK based, called Sunstinger. I'm really into bands that are more this is very narrow, but like shoegaze, post-punk, British.
Yeah.
There's a band called Toy, also from the UK, that I'm really obsessed with. I'm releasing my own EP next month, so I still do music myself. I just
Nice.
didn't make as much money at it as I wished. They're not new, but I love the band Dive, DIIV, and I encourage everyone to listen to them. There's a band from Arizona called Holy Fawn, and if you're a fan of dreamy melodic stuff like Mogwai meets a little bit of metal, they're amazing. And then on a total flip side, I found during the pandemic this South African artist named Mr. Jazzy Q, and he has a song called Woza, WOZA, that I'm obsessed with. And I got really into some of the South African music. So most of my stuff is very drony, Black Angels, either post-punk or Britpop Oasis vibes. But I do have some old school, like, Brazilian stuff in there, like Sergio Mendes, Jobim, and then Mr. Jazzy Q made it in my list.
That's so great. Nothing like getting it right from the source. Thank you so much. So you've talked about so many things that you're doing, and for people who are listening, if you want to get in touch with Tatiana, you can reach you through your website, right? Share with us, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my website is just TatianaSimonian.com. My last name is spelled Simon with IAN after it. It's just like two names put together. I'm at Tatiana on Instagram, Twitter, Medium, and now Polywork, which I'm not using too much yet, but it's a new platform. TATIANA. If you sign up through the contact list on my website, you can be added to my marketing, music, and motivation email list. I'm also doing different marketing tips on my Instagram, which to me right now is my favorite platform as far as letting people into my world. And I do consulting across marketing strategy, executive coaching, communications training for leaders, or media training for them, or even for junior members of your team that need to learn speech better. I was a collegiate national champion as well as speech and debate coach, which is so nerdy yet effective. And then I've also done DEI workshops and love being a part of anything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion conversations.
Incredible. Well, once again, I'm at the end of this going like, who is this woman? Well, you guys have all got it here. And if you want to get in touch with her, now you know how to, and we'll put it in the post when we air this. So thanks again, Tatiana. Have an awesome day. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.